So, you know how certain questions just keep popping up online?
Oh, definitely. Some things just have staying power.
Well, lately, the buzz seems to be all about Fort Knox again. You see things like, did Trump really want to check the gold?
Right, and Elon Musk tweeting about it, asking if it was stolen.
Exactly. It feels like this kind of old American mystery is back. You know, is all that gold still actually in Fort Knox?
It really is remarkable how that idea just, well, persists. So, for this deep dive, we're going to try and cut through all that speculation
Well,
and really look at what our sources are telling us about Fort Knox, the gold it's supposed to hold, and, the actual history of audits and who gets access.
okay.
We've pulled together articles from USA Today, WLKY News, and also the official info straight from the U.S. Mint's website. All current as of today, April 19th, 2025.
Perfect. So what's the goal here? What are we trying to figure out?
Well, the core mission really is to understand first, how much gold is officially supposed to be there? Second, is there any solid reason to doubt it's still there? And third, what actual verifiable facts can we piece together?
Okay, sounds like a plan. Let's try and crack this Fort Knox thing based on the evidence.
Yeah.
Now, this idea, this doubt, it's not new, right? Not just some internet thing.
Oh, not at all. You mentioned seeing that New York Times headline from, was it 74?
Yeah. Visitors get a peek at Fort Knox gold. It's there.
Yeah.
Sounds like even back then people were wondering.
Exactly. The USA Today source really highlights that, these theories. Definitely nothing new. That 1974 visit, with the journalists and lawmakers, that was apparently set up because, as the Times reported back then, there were repeated rumors that some of the gold was missing.
Wow. So the Treasury knew people were skeptical way back then.
It seems so. They've clearly been aware of this public skepticism for a long, long time. I mean, it's understandable, given how secretive the place has to be.
Right. So given this history of doubt, let's look at the official side. What are the current numbers? How much gold are we talking about?
Okay, so according to the U.S. Mint's own data, right now, Fort Knox holds 147.3 million troy ounces of gold.
Troy ounces. Remind me, that's slightly different from a regular ounce.
Yeah, just a bit heavier. It's the standard for precious metals. So 147.3 million troy ounces. That works out to about 5,000 tons of gold.
5,000 tons.
Gosh, that's a lot. It is. And interestingly, the Mint points out that's about half of all the gold the U.S. Treasury has stored away.
Half. Wow, okay.
And they also note, historically, the peak was way higher. Back on December 31st, 1941, it held almost 650 million ounces. 649.6, to be exact.
Whoa, so it's gone down quite a bit since 41. Any idea why?
Our sources don't really dive deep into the reasons for that decrease, but, gold reserves do fluctuate based on economic policies, international stuff.
Sure. Makes sense.
What's also really fascinating and maybe less known is that Fort Knox wasn't only about gold. During World War II, it was like the ultimate safe deposit box.
Oh, yeah. For what? For things like the actual Gettysburg Address,
Yeah.
the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. They stored them there for safekeeping.
No way. That really underlines the level of security we're talking about.
Doesn't it?
So, speaking of that security, I mean, the place sounds like a fortress from a movie. What do we know about how it was actually built? How secure is it?
The construction details are pretty wild. Built in 1936, the vault itself uses 16,000 cubic feet of granite,
Granite, okay.
plus 4,200 cubic yards of concrete, 750 tons of reinforcing steel, and another 670 tons of structural steel. It's substantial.
Understatement. I remember reading that quote from former Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin after his visit in 2017. What did he call it?
Freakishly well secured.
Yeah, that's it. Freakishly well secured. Kind of says it all, doesn't it?
It really does. And it's not just the physical stuff, the concrete and steel.
Right. There's more to it.
Definitely. The U.S. Mint is very clear. The actual design, the procedures to get inside, only a tiny number of people know the full picture.
And crucially, they stress that no single person has all the codes or keys or whatever is needed to open the vault.
Okay, so multiple people, multiple steps involved.
Layers.
Exactly. That separation of knowledge is a huge security feature in itself.
Which, of course, also feeds the mystery, I suppose, if it's that secret.
Precisely. It makes skepticism almost inevitable, which brings us nicely to the whole audit question.
Right, because Senator Rand Paul has been quite vocal, hasn't he? Saying there hasn't been a proper audit since 1974.
Yeah, that's his position. He's called for a more formal audit based on that belief.
But what does the Treasury say? Is that accurate?
Well, this is where things get a little interesting. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, He told Bloomberg TV something different. He said an audit is conducted every year.
Every year.
That's what he asserted, yeah. And he stated very clearly, all the gold is there, pointing to a report from September 30th of last year.
So a yearly audit versus no audit since 74. How do we square that? The U.S. Mint might offer a bit of clarity here. They explain that, yes, they do conduct regularly scheduled audits.
Okay.
And as part of those audits, they take out small samples of gold for purity testing, to make sure it's the real deal.
So testing samples, not necessarily counting every single bar every year.
That seems to be the implication, yes. They call it part of their audit procedures. And they also specifically state that, apart from these tiny samples for testing, no gold has been moved in or out of Fort Knox for many years.
So maybe the disagreement between Paul and Besant is about what counts as an audit, like a full count versus these regular checks.
That could very well be the heart of it. It raises that question, doesn't it? What is a sufficient audit for something like this? Is sampling enough? Or do you need that full physical inventory? There might be a bit of a gap in public understanding, or maybe just disagreement on the definition.
Yeah, definitely something for listeners to chew on. Okay, so audits happen, but access. Access is incredibly rare, right? We mentioned a few instances.
Exceptionally rare. The mint is blunt. Visitors are generally not permitted, period.
So those times people did get in were really big exceptions.
Huge exceptions. Our sources only really point to 3 specific times outsiders got into the actual vault.
Okay, let's recap there.
First was President FDR way back in 1943.
Right, wartime.
Then that 1974 visit, we talked about the media and lawmakers prompted by the rumors. And then the most recent one in 2017, that was Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, Governor Bevin, and some members of Congress.
It really does feel like those are like carefully managed PR events almost, designed to say, see, it's here.
That's certainly one interpretation. The infrequency definitely makes each visit seem significant.
Yeah. And that WLKY news piece had that amazing personal story. Someone who actually counted the gold. Lucas Stone.
Yes. That was such a great detail, Lucas Stone. He talked about helping with the audits back in the 80s.
How did he get to do that?
His father is actually a guard there. So Stone, when he was maybe 18 to 20, got this chance to be part of the audit team.
Wow. As a young guy.
Yeah, he mentioned feeling this immense responsibility, handling the nation's wealth. He described working in shifts, like half an hour inside the vault.
Under supervision, I assume.
Oh, absolutely. He said guards were watching constantly. Then his group would come out, and the next group would go in. He even kept his audit certificate.
That's fantastic. It makes it feel so much more real, doesn't it?
Right.
Less like this abstract vault and more like a place where actual people worked doing this specific task.
It really does humanize it, yeah. Takes away some of the mystique.
And even Mitch McConnell, after that 2017 visit, he obviously couldn't say much about security.
Right, he was careful.
But he did make that comment, something like, it would take a massive number of people to take it back out.
Yeah. That quote also stuck out. It reinforces the sheer physical scale of what's inside. It's not like you can just sneak a few bars out in a backpack.
Definitely not. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The gold itself. What form is it in? And what's this about the value on the books?
Right. So the official line from the U.S. Mint is that the gold is held as a U.S. asset at a book value of $42.22 per ounce.
Hold on. $42. $42.22 an ounce. That sounds incredibly low. Gold prices are way, way higher than that today.
Exactly. And that's a really important point that often causes confusion.
I'll say, why so low?
That $42.22 is basically a historical accounting number. It's been the official book value since, I believe, the 1970s. It has nothing to do with the current market value.
Okay. So it's just like a placeholder number on the ledger.
Pretty much. As the USA Today article pointed out, if you calculated the market value today, it would be in the hundreds of billions of dollars. It's like owning an old painting you bought for $100, but now it's worth millions. The original price is still on some old paper somewhere.
Gotcha. That makes more sense. So it's not that the gold itself is only worth $42 an ounce.
Not at all. And physically, the Mint says a standard gold bar there is about 7 inches long.
Okay.
0.3 and 58 inches wide, and 1 and 34 inches thick.
But how much does one weigh?
About 400 troy ounces, which is roughly 27.5 pounds.
27 pounds for one bar. Okay, yeah, definitely not carrying many of those out discreetly.
Not easily, no.
And I love this little detail from the Mint's history page. The first gold arrived back in 1937.
How? Get this. By U.S. mail.
Seriously. They mailed gold bars.
Apparently so. The Mint website even has pictures. You can see these mail trucks delivering the first shipments. It's quite something.
That's almost unbelievable, just picturing a mail carrier hauling crates of gold bars. Wow.
Different times, I guess. But it does show it was an official documented transfer, even back then.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, we've gone through the history, the security, the audits, the visits. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive into Fort Knox?
Well, I think the first thing is that the official sources, primarily the U.S. Mint, are very clear. Fort Knox currently holds a massive amount of U.S. gold reserves, that 147.3 million troy ounces.
Right, a significant chunk.
Absolutely. And second, while skepticism isn't new and is perhaps understandable given the secrecy,
Yeah, the lack of everyday access feeds into that.
the available evidence, the official statements, the details about regular purity testing during audits, those documented rare visits, and even firsthand accounts like Lucas Stone's, they all consistently point towards the gold actually being there.
So the story holds up based on what we can verify.
Based on the available information, yes.
And it's clear that public access isn't really feasible for obvious security reasons. But there is some transparency through the Mint's reports and these occasional controlled glimpses inside.
Exactly. It's a balance, isn't it? Security versus transparency.
Which leads to maybe a final thought to leave our listeners with.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. When you consider just how difficult it would be logistically to secretly remove, thousands of tons of gold,
Practically impossible without someone noticing, you'd think.
and you combine that with the extreme physical security, plus these ongoing, albeit perhaps not full count, audits, what does the fact that these rumors still persist, decade after decade, really tell us?
What does it tell us?
Maybe it says something about, well, our baseline level of trust in big institutions. Or maybe just about how easily speculation can take root and grow, especially when there isn't, and maybe can't be, 100% complete open-door transparency.
That's a really interesting point. The psychology behind the skepticism, perhaps.
Yeah.
Definitely something to ponder.